Hola, 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 everybody! Welcome to Zelda Speedruns and welcome to the WindWalker HD DoomZoom any percent no manual Super Swim pause storage tournament 2021. It's the semi-finals between Cithiel and madohaha, a pretty good match that we're expecting, and I hope you're all gonna enjoy it on comms with Video Freak and the match live on the layout. So let me switch over and let's send it over to Video Freak. Take it away. It's all yours.
All right, thank you very much for that. So, as said before, what we are currently doing is the DoomZoom tournament. This is a tournament that is for Wind Waker HD, any percent, no manual Super Swim, no pause storage. The main purpose of this particular route and this path is just to beat the game as quickly as possible through any means necessary, except for any sort of like outside hacking, as well as the exception of the manual Super Swim, which is the crazy pausing trick you've seen in other Wind Waker runs, as well as the fairly new pause storage glitch, which allows you to skip some cutscenes. But this is going to be a very fun run. This is typically a very beginner-friendly route, so if you are looking to get into this game, I would highly recommend learning this particular route. But we've got two amazing runners. I'm sure it'll be a very close race, and we definitely have a lot to talk about between the two runners, as If I remember correctly, Cithiel did use a slightly different route than what Mado uses. So we'll see how this goes, and we'll see who comes out on top after this. Looks like the countdown has started. So one thing that I do want to mention before the run formally starts here is that the runners have already done a setup for something a little bit later on, or like about 5 minutes into the game. What they've done is that they've copied a save file from one of their other files onto the file that they're using for this race, and then they deleted the file. What that does is that it allows for the very first save of the game to go by a little bit faster. If you just start up the game, start up a new file, or even start up an existing file, the very first time you save the game, it takes quite a bit longer than any other time you would save the game during that session. So we always copy and delete the file just to mitigate that slow save there. So in the beginning here, Outside Island is going to play out fairly similarly to how it does when you play this casually. There are a few time saves and a few optimizations that go through, but since we're not having to deal with the manual super swim, everything moves pretty much the way that you would expect it to at the beginning of the game. Okay. So one thing that is a little bit noticeable between the two runners kind of right away is the language that they are using. It looks like Mado is using Italian, if I caught that correctly, and Cithiel is using Spanish. This is important based on how text scrolling works in this game. It used to be that in Wind Waker SD, or the Wind Waker for the GameCube, Japanese was the fastest because it scrolled along at the same speed as every other text, and it had the least characters per text box. In HD, it's a little bit different. They sped up every other language except Japanese. So what turns out to be the fastest language right now is Italian, which is what Mado is currently running on. The second fastest language is Spanish, which is what you see Cithiel running on. The reason why Mado is running Italian versus Cithiel running Spanish largely has to do with hardware. Italian is only available on a Wii U that has been purchased in the European Union, I believe. It needs to have the PAL format. If it has the PAL format, you can get Italian on your Wii U. But if it is an NTSC format, and something that's bought more in the States or in any location that uses an NTSC format, you only get the options between English, Spanish, and French. So Spanish would be the fastest on an NTSC Wii U. Yep, that is me. My name is Video Freak, and I will be your commentator today. So coming up right here is actually a little bit of RNG. It's a little bit strange to see it, but we'll see who gets it. Looks like Mado got the wave. Both of them got the wave. So going up onto this lookout platform, Errol does have a bit of a chance to be in kind of like a waving animation as she's just waving at some birds in the air. That waving animation actually is a little bit slower, as if she was just looking out and not waving at all. It's only just a couple of seconds, but it is RNG and does save just a bit of time if RNG happens to be in your favor. So here in the telescope, there also is another very quick optimization. The Wii U gamepad makes use of gyro for their motion controls. So in this particular cutscene, you can use that gyro to flick the telescope up to see the Helmarock King, which is flying over here. But it looks like both runners did use control sticks, so just slightly slower, but a little bit more accurate, as you can set a specific angle rather than kind of lifting the gamepad up and hoping you got the right position for the bird. Coming up next is going to be getting the hero sword from Orca. In this game, this is where you get the sword for the very first time, and there is a couple of very small things you can do to speed this section up. Whenever you are actually slashing the sword and Orca is teaching you the different kinds of sword slashes that are in this game, he only cares about the first two. So what this means is that in a combination of 4 sword slashes, you can do the first two the way that he wants you to, hold back on the third slash, and hold forward on the fourth slash to do a little bit faster of a sword combination as opposed to just pressing and holding the button that you need to. So you can see Mado just did it there. Whenever they unleash that little spin attack animation there, that means that they got the fast strat. So far, both runners are doing extremely good. This next up here is the instant parry. This is a little bit difficult. It has only about a 2 to 3 frame window, but if they get it, they can instantly parry on the second attack. Looks like Mado was just a little late on the input. Let's see if Cithiel gets it. Cithiel did get it, so Cithiel gets just a little bit of time save that Mado didn't. Looks like right now they are getting ready to be about even, depending on the language. Mado's slightly ahead just due to the text scrolling. Oftentimes, whenever you are looking into the early game of this speedrun, there is one major thing that is good to consider in terms of just general movement, and it's something that's very important as well in glitchless, and that is the use of a save warp. If you save and quit the game, it should bring Link back to his set position every single time. And on Outside Island, coming back from Grandma's house, as well as coming back from Orca, it is faster to just save, quit, and reload the game, as opposed to just backtracking and crossing the bridge and walking here as normal. So just a couple little optimizations, a couple little save warps that help cover very large distances in a very short amount of time. As both runners up here are coming up onto this next section, the Forest of Fairies, I want to talk a little bit about the rupee count, as rupees are very important in no manual super swim. Because you don't get the manual super swim, you have to use the sail for the first time you go between islands. And to get the sail, you need 80 rupees. In order for these runners to be safe coming out of the woods, they need at least 25 rupees. So what they do there is they spin attack that log to get that first 20 rupees by clipping into it. They also do a little optimization by side hopping into that bokoblin to aggro him during the cutscene, just to make life getting on that stump a little easier. And then in this fight here, in this patches of grass, and as they're fighting these two bokoblins here, they want to try and get that rest of that 25 rupees here. This will be some good time save once they get to Windfall Island. Looks like Mado has 26 rupees, very good rupee count. Cithiel is a little bit low, so let's see if he can catch up a little bit. Looks like they were only able to leave Forest of Fairies with 21 rupees, so Cithiel will have to play a little bit of catch up here in Forsaken Fortress and Windfall. This is a pretty long cutscene. There is a way to skip this cutscene with use of the pause storage trick, which is not allowed in this current route. But it is a frame-perfect trick to do, and it looks a little bit crazy whenever it's done properly. But in all instances with a run that includes this cutscene, it is actually faster to let this cutscene play out and instead skip the cutscene that allows Link to leave the island. Cutscene's annoying? Yeah, very annoyingly long. I agree with you there. Alright, and now our character has purpose. We have a reason to go fight now. So coming up next is the pirate ship as well as the Forsaken Fortress. Now, oftentimes you will hear runners of this game abbreviate things very much so to the point where it can be a little confusing if you're not used to the terminology. So, after the pirate ship, the very first time we go into Forsaken Fortress, excuse me. The very first time we enter Forsaken Fortress, we call that FF1. The second time when we come back after hitting about the midway point in the run, we call that FF2. So FF1 tends to have a lot of very important triggers that go with it. There's that's the section that spawns the King of Red Lions into the game. It is also the place where you get the Gossip Stone, which spawns bombs in the pirate ship. Slight detail, but interesting to know about that particular behavior. And it also has some really interesting movement when it comes to dodging searchlights and moblins, because to be frank, Forsaken Fortress really needs to up its security game. It is not that spectacular. But we get to see just how poor the Forsaken Fortress moblins keep their stuff secure when we get there. For now, we're getting ready to enter in my favorite cutscene in this particular category. So normally this cutscene is extremely long, extremely drawn out. Not too much that goes to it other than just some story beats, plot moments, a really sad, heartfelt moment where you're waving goodbye to your grandma. But it's also a very lazily made cutscene, as there are some leftovers that are put into the background that if you blink, you will miss it. It's not going to happen for a little bit, but what you will see in this cutscene when it pans to Outside Island is that there's a group of people waving Link goodbye. It's the town sending the hero off. Then it will pan to Grandma, and then pan back to the island a couple of times. But the very last time it pans to the island, where this group of people is standing on the beach, right above them, there is a duplicate model of Tetra and Link just floating there. No idea why. I don't know if they're leftovers from a previous cutscene or leftovers from this cutscene, but it looks really weird. It's about to show up on Mado screen. I will point it out as soon as it comes up here. But it's very much a blink and you'll miss it type deal. And if you look at Mado's screen, they are right above the group of people that are on the island. Just a little green and a little blue speck. It's about to show up on Cithiel's stream if you happen to miss it the first time. So right here in the pirate ship is Rope Game, and Rope Game is weird, to say the least. There's a lot of very strange properties that the ropes have that make movement between them a little bit annoying at times. Sometimes it can kind of jerk you in a bit of a random direction, or you'll jump and grab the rope again. So this rope game, though it does look easy, it is deceptively difficult. So we'll see if both runners can get this first try. The player characters technically is throughout the cutscene, got left non-visible for a second. Could be it. Very much could be something like that. It's just fun to see those types of oversights. It makes it for a very fun viewing experience. Mado flawlessly going through those ropes there. Let's see how Cithiel manages. So yeah, Cithiel right there, you can see he's kind of getting jerked around by the rope. In fact, that's why they fell right there. It popped him over to the left a little bit too far than he was expecting, so these ropes can be very tricky to deal with at times. Mado with the gold, fantastic. So here we are in Forsaken Fortress Run, and where the security system of Ganon's forces needs a complete and serious overhaul. The most effective thing that we can see in this particular fortress are actually going to be the searchlights. The searchlights are very dangerous when it comes to detection and how the security in this area works. If a searchlight sees you, even if it doesn't look like it saw you, you get caught, you get thrown in jail, you lose time. And it's pretty much within that yellow circle that's on the ground, but that hitbox does extend a little bit outside of what is currently visible. So those lights are a little bit dangerous. They're easily the most dangerous part of this entire section here. But what they want to do first to navigate the spotlights is first do a trick to skip a cutscene. This is called the Gossip Stone skip. In this category, it saves time and skips a cutscene and a conversation with Tetra. Just makes things run by a little bit faster. And then they're going to pick up 40 rupees in the courtyard, or maybe a little bit more if they happen to be low on the rupee count. And then they'll climb up to a window that they'll need to jump through to reach a spotlight, specifically the spotlight that is pointing at the window on Cithiel's screen. So we'll see how they navigate it. A couple of real simple, real small tricks, but they do look very impressive whenever they get performed here. So Forsaken Fortress 1 movement is always very, very fun to watch. You mashed A and B too early? I was wondering what happened there on the ladder. Looks like Mado got the Gossip Stone skip. It is very easy to bonk on that wall, so that is a very small amount of time loss. But they were able to get the trick. A bit of a close call with the spotlight, though. You can see how Mado's giving the spotlights a very wide distance, or they're keeping their distance from those spotlights. That's just because of how weird the hitboxes can be. Here comes window jump. This allows them to get to the searchlight that they need to disable. Mado is using a bit of a slower setup, and unfortunately it looks like he did miss the up press. So that does put Cithiel in the lead here. Let's see if Cithiel can perform window jump first try and get back a little bit of that time. Alright, looks like Cithiel is going for this method of jumping to the window, and he also misses. So now we are on Mado's attempt at window jump, and second try does it. They were able to grab onto the ledge and climb through. So Mado takes back his lead, or their lead, and they're going to take care of this Bokoblin up here. This Bokoblin is very much difficult to deal with, let's say. They don't like to go where you want them to go, and oftentimes they don't hit when you want them to hit. So Mado's trying to bait this Bokoblin to hitting the pot that's behind him so he can grab a free stick. Looks like the Bokoblin is not quite behaving. Very good backup strat with the throw, though. So knock the Bokoblin off the edge there. That instantly kills the Bokoblin and also makes sure that it doesn't respawn. So that Spotlight has been disabled for the rest of FF1. Next, Mado is going to have to deal with some Moblins, and Moblins in this game are not smart, and this is only in HD. You can literally roll right past them, and they cannot do anything about it. The main thing about it is that you need to make sure that they don't have you in their line of sight for a certain amount of time. So in both of these sections here, there's a little corner or a little wall that Link will be able to slip behind to get them out of the Moblin's line of sight. So even though the Moblin sees Mado here, he's got no shot of being able to catch him. Cithiel looks like got the good Bokoblin strat with the quick spin. That was a very fast spotlight on Cithiel's end. Bokoblin went exactly where he wanted it to, executed a perfect quick spin and knocked the Bokoblin off, so Cithiel is starting to get some of that time back. Mado is having to deal with this guard. He definitely will see him, but as long as he sticks to the left here and gets past that corner, the guard will never be able to catch up. That guard is also a little bit interesting because it is RNG based on whether or not it spots you whenever you roll past it. And the reason why it's RNG is because sometimes he likes to sniff the ground for a really long time in a specific corner of his path. And if he decides to spend a long time sniffing, then you can just roll right by and he won't even notice. Here we are at the Hero's Sword on Mado's screen. Now they do want to unleash a very specific amount of hits, which was 3 sword slashes as well as what's called a jump spin. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in that here. What those 3 slashes and the jump spin do, or the way that the sword works in this game, is that a normal slash, so a horizontal slash, a vertical slash, or a thrust, all 3 of those each do 1 point of damage each sword slash. Sometimes you can get lucky and get a double hit if the sword stays in the enemy for a little bit long. You actually might see Cithiel get a double hit on this green Bokoblin here. But that's what a normal sword slash does, is 1 damage. A quick spin, or a spin attack, does 2 points of damage, so it doubles that. But there's another kind of slash in this game called a jump spin. And what that is that if you do a spin attack immediately out of a jump attack, that spin attack does 4 points of damage. And it's actually really easy to do. All you have to do is do a jump attack, and while you're still in the air, spin your control stick. When Link lands, they will perform a jump spin. It does 4 points of damage on the Hero Sword. It does 8 on the Master Sword as all damage values get doubled. It is easily one of the best ways to quickly kill an enemy in this game. This cutscene here is very long. This is the cutscene that spawns the King of Red Lions and gives you the map in the game. It is also important for this category because it's a required cutscene. There's no way to get around it without super swimming. But as we go through this cutscene here, this is where the rupee route is going to be a bit more important because they can buy the sale. And it's also a nice little break for the runners, as this cutscene is very long with no text. So oftentimes a really good bathroom break or a real quick snack break. So in Windfall Island, there are a few places that are guaranteed to drop blue rubies that are on the way from the boat to Zenari, who's the guy that sells you the sale. Now, there is a small detour that the runners do have to take. In this game, you must save Tingle before you are eligible to buy the sale, which is a little disappointing, I know. But There is a pot under a ramp on the way to Tingle that always drops 5 rupees. You can hit that pot twice, once on the way to Tingle, once outside. And there's also a pot on the way to Zenari that drops another 5 rupees. So there are 15 guaranteed rupees that the runners can get on the way to the sale. So if they ended Forsaken Fortress 2 with 65 rupees, they don't need to account for anything extra. 70 is the best because they don't have to revisit the pot under the ramp. But we'll see what rupee counts are after this cutscene. There are a couple of places that you can recover some rupees based on RNG means, like there's a flower patch that you can spin attack that can give you some money, but none of that is guaranteed. Mado has 66 rupees, so it looks like they'll need to get the pot under the ramp twice, and as well as the pot on the way to Zenari. That's alright, not the fastest method, but still pretty good. Oh, actually looks like they're going for flower rupees, so they only do need the pot under the stair once, as well as the pot on the way to Zenari. Let's see how Cithiel routes this out, as I do know Cithiel was at a slight disadvantage when it came to their rupee count. Alright, looks like Cithiel is working with 64 rupees. If they can get 1 rupee in the flower patch, then they can guarantee have enough to go for the pots. If they can't get a rupee, then that's a little bit of a scary situation. But they got 68 rupees from that, so they should be fine. They just need to go for the pot under the ramp here one more time in order to get the correct rupee amount. So Tingle in this game is not very fun because he gives you an item called the Tingle Bottle. In the year 2021, where we currently all reside, the Tingle Bottle is completely useless and has been useless for several years. It used to be the way that the Miiverse worked in this game. You could like send messages in a bottle and people would find them on the beaches of certain islands. Just as kind of like a fun little social media type thing that was around with the Wii U. But since the Miiverse service is no longer active, the Tingle Bottle is quite literally a very useless item. All it does is bring up a menu screen and that's it. Actually, I don't even think it brings up a menu. I think it brings up an error message saying it can't connect to the service. On the way to Dragon Roost Island, you will see both runners doing this technique that Mado is currently performing. What this is called is sail pumping, and the way that it works is that every time you take out the sail, there is an extremely small boost to the King of Red Lion's speed that just kind of nudges him forward. If you look closely, you can actually see it happen. Now, this is a very small speed boost, so it doesn't save an extremely good amount of time, but it saves about 2 seconds per quadrant that you have to pass through. So since we're going from Windfall Island, passing through Popcorn Island to get to Dragon Roost Island, they have to go through 2 quadrants to get to the next part of the run, so saving 4 seconds on the way there is definitely very good, especially since this trick is extremely easy to perform on HD. It's a little trickier on SD because the sail pretty much goes up or down whenever you hit the button, and on Wind Waker there's a little bit of a delay. But sail pumping is something that is around in Wind Waker SD and HD. It just works slightly differently with the timing on SD. One other thing to mention as well is that Wind Waker HD, to help alleviate the amount of time it takes to go from one location to another in this game, Nintendo added the Swift Sail in Wind Waker HD. The Swift Sail will not be acquired during this run. It is too far out of the way, it is way too RNG dependent. You will typically only see the Swift Sail achieved in either glitchless runs or in runs that require it like 100%. Otherwise, it is much faster to super swim whenever item sliding gets unlocked, which is going to be pretty soon here. So right here, the route has caught up to any percent. Actually, it's a little bit out of order, but if in the regular any percent unrestricted category, the manual super swim drops Link off on the cutscene that Mado is currently watching to get the Wind Waker. So here is where the two routes ultimately converge. The only difference from this point forward is that the unrestricted any percent route does have to make a quick detour to go to Forsaken Fortress 1 to spawn the King of Red Lions. But that's not necessarily the most important with this particular category. What Mado is going to be going for here, as well as Cithiel, is something called Rock Skip, Rock Jump, Rock Hop, whatever you want to call it. But basically, you can side hop onto that rock and roll off to jump onto this ledge. And with a good rolling jump, you can clear that gap and skip a very long puzzle that has to do with you picking bomb flowers, setting them next to rocks, and waiting for them to explode. Saves minutes for just doing that one small jump. Also, it is glitchless. Rock jump is allowed in glitchless, I believe. So this is another part of the run where there's quite a bit of downtime, a lot of text scrolling, a lot of talk to this person, go here, talk to this person, go here, and so on and so forth. But there is a bit of an interesting distinction that you can make in this cutscene, and that has to do with text scrolling. I mentioned it very briefly before with Italian versus Spanish, but there are also two different types of text boxes that are in this game. What Cithiel and Mado are both looking at right now is just normal story text scrolling, something that goes across the screen, goes a few characters at a time, but doesn't necessarily all instantly appear. Now, Mado is getting ready to go talk to Medley, who has something called quick text, where all the text can appear in the text box in the same frame. And there are two different types of text mashing that need to be done for this. For anything that scrolls, you want to mash A and B, and for anything that is instant text, you want to hold B and mash A. It's very, very subtle, the differences between those two, and it is very, very small time save. We're talking a matter of frames to just a couple seconds across the entire run. But it is something interesting to point out during this section. You can actually see a direct comparison of scrolling text versus quick text right here. Cithiel has scrolling text and Mado has quick text or instant text. They are both using different mashing to get past these two cutscenes. There were a couple of instances as well of quick text earlier in the run. When we got the hero sword from Orca, a lot of Orca's dialogue was quick text. So that isn't the first time we've seen it. This is just the best place to view them directly side by side, in my opinion. So normal progression in this game dictates that you need to get a certain amount of items from a certain amount of dungeons. Very first dungeon that you have to go through is Dragon Roost Cavern, so you can get the Din's Pearl to eventually summon the Tower of the Gods, get the Master Sword, and then head back to Forsaken Fortress to lose to Ganon. But in the speedrun, we only need to go into Dragon Roost Cavern, and we don't need to visit Forbidden Woods, we don't need to visit Tower of the Gods, and we also don't even have to complete Dragon Roost Cavern. We only need to complete half of this dungeon, and that is due to the grappling hook. Once we receive the grappling hook, it unlocks a really cool trick in this game that I'm going to keep a little bit secret until we get there, But once you get the grappling hook, this game breaks wide open, and we don't enter another dungeon until the very end of the game. So in this little spring section in front of Dragon Roost's cavern, this is actually on a timer, or on a cycle. And it has to do with the wind. You can see the wind blowing on the screen, going left, right, forward, backwards, and then fully silent. Not in that order, but generally you can see the wind moving around and then going completely silent. This is where the language difference between the runners makes probably the most amount of difference here. In Italian, because the text scrolls faster and you can get through Medley's text box faster, you have a bit more time to hit the cycle. You can take your time, wait a couple moments to make sure the wind is blowing in the correct direction before you throw Medley. However, what Cithiel is going to need to do here, because they are on Spanish, is do really good text smashing, and the moment they get to the spot where they can throw Medley, they pretty much have to throw Medley right away. Looks like both runners were able to throw Medley without any issues, so Dragon Roost Cavern is getting ready to be attacked by both runners. Now you might see a couple of interesting strats here. You may notice that some runners opt not to use the sword in this dungeon, or don't really use the sword at all. That is because this dungeon is done without the sword in any percent. So if the runners are very familiar with running unrestricted any percent, you might see them go for swordless strats. But in some areas, the sword does grant you a little bit of a speed advantage. Looks like Mado is going for a pot throw strat, which is normally used in swordless DRC. However, due to the way that that particular throw works and the way that that Boko stick travels, it actually tends to be faster even if you do have a sword. So we'll see if there are any little instances where Mado goes out of their way to grab an item or a weapon that is not something that's already on their back. Now, it'll be interesting, too, to see how Cithiel handles it as well, as Cithiel will be using... I actually don't know how Cithiel will be doing DRC, but they are doing a very tricky bomb boost across that first lava platform. There are a couple different ways to go across that little bird statue area. The intended route is to throw a bomb in each of those pots. If you are like me and have really bad aim, that second pot is impossible to get the bomb in. So some runners try and do a little bit of faster or a little bit of alternate strats. In any percent no manual super swim, you can do a jump slash across the lava, but what Cithiel did there was instead used a bomb to throw it, hit the lava at the same time that they jumped, so that way the explosion launched them across. It is a very small time save, and it is risky. If that trick got missed and Cithiel landed in the lava, that would have lost probably around 20 seconds, but whenever it's done and performed properly, it does save more time as opposed to doing it the intended method. Cithiel does look like he is using a bit more sword strats, as they did slash the gate leading into the main room of DRC. So let's see how these strategies differ in other rooms of this dungeon here. Much like how the room outside of Dragon Roost Cavern was on a timer, Dragon Roost Tavern itself is also on a timer. There is a cycle that is going on that has to do with lava geysers that are right outside in this area here. The goal of the early game is to try and beat the cycle for those lava geysers. Looks like Mado was slightly slow, so they did not get the early cycle, but we will see how Cithiel goes through. Typically, if you play through Dragon Roost Cavern really quickly and really cleanly at the very beginning, you can make that first cycle. Mado did a really difficult trick there called a roll clip, where they clipped into a wall, in this case a little bit partially, and then on the same frame that they are able to move, they inputted a roll. It is a frame-perfect trick, but it allows you to clear that gap pretty easily. There are multiple ways to cross that gap if you're not just going to hang and do it the vanilla way. Because you have a sword on your back, you can actually do a side hop and time a jump slash that can also clear that gap as well. Cithiel's getting ready to approach the lava geysers, so let's see if they have made the cycle. Ooh, looks like it'll be close. Not quite, just missed it. I'm doing well, Mado. Sorry, I just realized you talked to me in chat. A lot of this right here, in terms of just going through the middle rooms of Dragon Roost Cavern, just has to do a lot with movement optimizations. There's some ledges that you could side hop on top of. A couple of ledges where if you roll off on the corner, it allows you to instantly grab the ledge to save just a couple frames. A lot of movement optimizations, a lot of fight optimizations. It does look like Mado is opting for swordless strats for this particular fight. That is a little bit slower, as the sword is a little bit faster than this giant machete that Mado is holding. The machete does more damage, but the actual swing of it tends to be pretty slow. So using the sword, the hero sword in that area is slightly faster. But it's familiar for people who are used to running the unrestricted any percent category to do that room without a sword. Ooh, looks like Mado just missed that hop to save a little bit of time moving forward there. A little bit unfortunate. That trick is a little bit tricky, as you do have to beat a cycle as well as manage that magtail on the platform there. So a little bit of time save, or a little bit of time lost there, gives Cithiel a chance to catch up. Alright, and Mado has entered the final room of Dragon Roost Cavern, or at least the final room as final room that we care about. Their goal is to go up to the very top of this section, defeat 2 green bokoblins, just like they did at the end of Forsaken Fortress 1, as well as a moblin. So let's see how these fights go. Ooh, Mado is opting for the hero sword strat, but it looks like the green bokoblin RNG was not on their side. They spread out a little bit, especially after that jump slash, so a little bit slow on the kill there. Let's see how the moblin kill goes. Looks like they are opting for using the big machete there. There is an advantage to the machete where you can get double hits on the moblin with it. You can also get double hits with the hero sword, but it is a bit better to do it with the giant machete just because it does a little bit more damage than the hero sword. Mado right now is going to have to go through some text and go through a couple of save warps here, so let's see how Cithiel navigates these fights. While Cithiel is fighting, I do want to get into explaining why the grappling hook is so important to this game. The grappling hook, as well as the bow, the boomerang, and the hook shot, all have a unique property to where you can aim and move at the exact same time. This kind of makes things work a little bit weird. I believe there's only one line of code that is responsible for this behavior, but if you start moving in a direction, pause, and on the next frame, hold slightly back in the opposite direction in something we called ESS, which is right outside of a dead zone, Link starts to gain speed exponentially. And so Mado is about to use that trick to charge against the wall, flip into the water, and launch across the ocean. This is the trick for Wind Waker HD. Item sliding is absolutely massive in this game. A lot of the movement from this point forward has to do with clips regarding the item slide, like what Mado is doing, super swims, hops across different ledges here, so item sliding is going to bust this entire speedrun wide open here. What these runners are mainly going for right now, in terms of the specific islands that they are visiting and the order that they are visiting them, is that they need to get a couple of items. Mado is using the late bombs route. So Mado needs to get a quiver to be able to get arrows from how we get the bow later in the game, as well as a bomb bag to be able to get bombs from how we do so later in the game. Whereas Cithiel is actually going to be taking a slightly different route. It looks like Cithiel is going to be going for the bomb skip route. It makes late game a lot harder, but it does make the route in general faster because that is one less skip that they have to do. Unfortunately, it does look like Mado has made a bit of a critical error. No, maybe not. Isla del Drago, they're fine. Okay. Saving in the ocean here is a little bit scary due to how the King of Red Lions works in the very beginning of the game. It has to do with how you're not supposed to be able to be in the boat without Din's Pearl, but if you void out in any area and King of Red Lions picks you up in a quadrant that is outside of an L shape made by Windfall Island, Dragon Roost Island, and Forest Haven, which Thorned Fairy Island falls outside of that L shape, the King of Red Lions will see that you're there, say, hey, that's not good, I'm taking you back to Dragon Roost Island, and you have to wait. If you save warp in the water and that happens, you have to wait. But it looks like since the King of Red Lions was still in Dragon Roost Island, Mado was okay to save in the water there. So very, very close call on Mado's end there, but they did get the fairy clip. Cithiel was as well. That is the only clip that Cithiel will need to do. Mado still has to do one more fairy clip in order to get all the items that they need for the end game. So let's see how the second fairy clip goes. Mado will be going towards, I believe, Eastern Fairy Island, while Cithiel will be going straight to Forest Haven to get the Deku Leaf. This does put Cithiel in the lead. However, Cithiel does have a much more difficult task ahead of him once they enter Ganon's tower. Looks like Cithiel got a really fast super swim off of Thorned Fairy Island, but they were able to get control and make it to Forest Haven. Mado is trying the same swim. This swim is difficult because it is RNG based and next to two islands that can do what we call splooshing. Fire Mountain, Dragon Roost Island, Forest Haven, Windfall Island, Ice Ring Island, and a couple of others have a lot of resources that go with those islands. So when you enter that quadrant, the game has to take some time to load it. In those instances where the game has to take time to stop and load that island, it unloads the water that Link is in and then reloads it. So Link is falling, which sets his speed to 0. It stops you dead in your tracks. We call that a sploosh. It is very, very easy to sploosh off of that super swim coming off of Thorned Fairy Island because you're also needing to rely on the water to pick you up and carry you away from Thorned Fairy Island, as opposed to using an even slope to slip into the water when you know you have enough speed. Super swimming and item sliding in general to this game has a lot of nuance to it, so that's why you see a lot of different setups and a lot of different approaches here. Looks like Mado is struggling with the fairy clip. This is an extremely precise trick. It requires a extremely good ESS angle, which is right outside of the dead zone, as well as a good just viewing angle itself, as there's only a small amount of the island that you can clip through to actually hit that loading zone. But it looks like Mado was able to get the second fairy. Cithiel is currently in the Deku Tree cutscene. This is a fairly long cutscene, and it was also a cutscene that gets skipped in the current unrestricted route. But as we are doing no manual super swim and no pause storage, we will enjoy the design of the Deku Tree in this game. You got a big nose and one tooth, and that's all he needs. Mado's having to do a little bit of a difficult trick here. This is an island hop that goes back to Dragon Roost Island, and this has to do with how saving works in this game. With the specific story progression that both runners have, the King of Red Lions is your save point. Whenever you save and reload the game, you appear either in the King of Red Lions if you saved in water, or if you're on land, you appear on the island that the King of Red Lions is stationed at. The exception to this rule is, for some reason, Dragon Roost Island. What Mado is trying to do is to build up enough speed to launch themselves from Eastern Fairy Island to Dragon Roost Island, and once they're there at Dragon Roost Island, they see Dragon Roost Island is loaded, they can save warp and be put on the beach of Dragon Roost Island. I don't know why Dragon Roost behaves in that way. I believe it's the only island that breaks the general rule of saving for Wind Waker, but it does allow us to be able to escape Eastern Fairy Island, as there is not a way for us to super swim off of this island with current knowledge. Mado looks to be a little bit far away from Dragon Roost Island. It did load, so we'll see if the save warp does put them on the beach, but with the amount of distance there is a possibility that it puts them in the boat. Looks like it did put them in the boat. This is something that I was discussing earlier about how the boat grabs Link and sails him into the L shape that he is allowed to be in. A bit of unfortunate time loss from Mado. Their only option to continue the run is to allow this to play out until the game regains control of King of Red Lions. Eastern Fairy Island is okay for that to happen on. However, Thorn Fairy Island can be pretty bad, as it does try and sail you back to Dragon Roost Island instead of back into the sailable land. Cithiel got the Deku Leaf, and they are now going for a very difficult trick called the Beetle Swim. This is the hardest super swim in the game, and what they're doing is using Beetle's ship to act as a slope that goes into the water. And it looks like Cithiel was able to actually get the swim first try, but they don't have enough speed to make it all the way to FF2, which is their destination, so Cithiel looks like is going to be taking a backup swim on Windfall Island. One other island that I did fail to mention earlier in terms of islands that can sploosh you is Forsaken Fortress 2. It has a lot of things going on with it. It has the spotlights, it has cannons with bombs, and it also changes the time of day to night. So it's extremely easy to sploosh on Forsaken Fortress 2. The way that you will see runners mitigate that, as well as just a way to generally combat the risk of splooshing whenever they super swim, is that you'll see them kind of like dart back and forth in the water a little bit. If you switch the direction that you're going in the super swim and go back and forth, it kills off a lot of speed and also stalls you in that quadrant. So it gives the quadrant time to safely load and not unload the water around you, while also allowing you to maintain enough speed to get onto the island. It looks like Mado right now is just now getting to Forest Haven, so Mado will still need to go through the Deku Tree cutscene. I did miss it on Cithiel's screen, so I don't know if they did this little optimization, but there is a small thing you can do in Deku Tree, or the Forest Haven, called the Bulb Skip, which I'll go over later. Cithiel right now is doing a trick called Door Clip. It's a very complex trick. It's difficult to explain how exactly it works, but if you go to that store at a specific angle and have a specific amount and quality of speed, it allows you to basically pop underneath the door, grab an invisible door frame that is underneath the loading zone to get into this cutscene Cithiel is in, and just allows you to walk right in. If you were playing this game vanilla without doing any sort of speed tech and without playing it the way that Nintendo intended, you have to have the Master Sword so you can damage Puppet Ganon, so you can get the Skull Hammer, so you can mash the peg that unlocks the door. This skips a ton of that. The Master Sword easily being the longest time sink in that series. This is semifinals. Cithiel is getting ready to face up against the Helmrock King and get to a cutscene that we call Early Master Sword, or EMS. This is a cutscene that doesn't really have a whole lot going for it, other than it gets skipped in the unrestricted category of this game. However, the boss that follows it in the Helmrock King is able to be fully skipped in every category, including glitchless. It's more difficult to skip it in glitchless, but it is possible. The way that it's done in this category is that Link will need to item slide all the way up to the very top to where the Helmrock King kind of perches and doesn't allow Link to go through. With item sliding, you can sneak right past the bird and he doesn't even notice. Once you're there, you have to climb up and clip out of bounds, so that way you can ultimately walk on the railing just outside of the boss fight arena, and from walking on that railing, you're able to jump outside of the arena and then walk into the door where Ganondorf is hanging out after you have already supposedly killed the Helmrock King. You'll see Cithiel performing it very close here. It's an extremely fun trick to watch. It's actually fairly easy to perform. The only thing you have to do is just hold down. Alright, here comes the item slide up this little tower that Cithiel's getting ready to do here. This is a pretty easy one. The biggest trick about this is that you don't want to charge up too much speed in the item slide. It is extremely easy to crash this game with an item slide. It takes about 10 seconds, and that is not a joke. Cithiel right now clipped out of bounds by holding down, so he's getting ready to crawl under these spikes. He jumped onto the railing and is now going into first person for a little bit easier control to get around the railing here. These little battlements don't matter, but they jump past the spikes that block this boss fight arena, so all they have to do is item slide to this cutscene here, and they have now unlocked the Ganon cutscene, or the Ganondorf cutscene. This has a lot of very important things that go with this cutscene, but I do want to switch focus to Mado Stream, as I want to see if they are going for a bulb skip or if they get bulb skip. What bulb skip allows you to do is a very small optimization, but this bulb that Mado is about to get into right here, you can skip the following bulb and just go straight onto the leaf, just like so. Mado did a flawless bulb skip. Saves just a little bit of time, but is very good to do to get caught up here. Now we have the EMS, or the Early Master Sword cutscene, that I do want to go into a bit more detail. This is a cutscene in the game that absolutely cannot be skipped for any reason whatsoever, if you expect to beat the game. This does something very important, which is swapping the animation sets for certain characters in this game. A lot of technical knowledge, but basically it allows characters to move in expected ways, and if they are not allowed to do so in cutscenes, then the game will freak out and crash as a direct response. So this cutscene is necessary to watch in all categories that proceed past Forsaken Fortress 2. This is also the cutscene that has a little bit of weird properties, or shows off a weird property about this game. which is how it handles items in cutscenes. A lot of times in games, you'll find that if a character has like a custom item or a custom weapon equipped, it doesn't always show on the character in the cutscene, and this game is no different. Link entered that EMS cut sword with the hero sword, but when he walked in the very first frame, he had the Master Sword equipped. This is because the game knows that Link must have the Master Sword in that cutscene. It sees that Link does not have the Master Sword going into the cutscene, so the way that it handles that exception is by just giving Link the Master Sword. There's a couple of cutscenes that do have some properties. The Puppet Ganon cutscene at the end of the game gives Link the mirror shield as well as the fully charged Master Sword, but that is the reason why we call this cutscene EMS for Early Master Sword. You walk into this cutscene without the Master Sword, and it just gives it to you because you were supposed to have it by that point. This also is going to open up Endgame. So Cithiel is getting ready to enter the very final part of the game and the late game gauntlet. There are a lot of tricks that have to do with this final... Ooh, Mado just missed the leap across FF2. Fortunately, though, they didn't have too much speed, so they are able to back it up on FF2. That's an extremely easy trick to build up too much speed and crash on, so really, really good backup by Mado there. But what Cithiel is getting ready to go against here is the holy grail of speedrunning tricks in terms of Wind Waker, which is barrier skip. So they'll be clipping through Hyrule Castle, clipping through the barrier, and then entering Ganon's Tower, where they will then skip the trials, where you're supposed to fight Goma, Kalidamos, Jalhalla, and Mulgera from the first two dungeons and the last two dungeons. So he skips that trial entirely. Looks like Mado is having a little bit of trouble with that island, with that item slide there. This needs to be played a little bit carefully, as there is a trigger to spawn mini blins right above that door. It looks like they got spawned. So this does mean that Mado will have to either reload the save or have to deal with mini blins. So Cithiel right now is going for castle clip. Looks like he pulled Leaf just a little bit too early, so he clipped inside of the castle. Not the end of the world, it just means that Tetra is going to be our audience when going for barrier skip. The only thing that it really impacts with this is that you can't hold left trigger as easily or without any sort of consequence here. So Cithiel is setting up an extremely precise angle after canceling the knockback damage from the barrier with a frame-perfect Wind Waker pull. He's getting enough speed with a very specific angle, which is 15 angles out of about 65,000, so that way he can get through a very tiny gap between two invisible planes. And Cithiel nailed it. I didn't even get through explaining the trick before he just popped right through the barrier. So, flawless barrier skip on Cithiel's end. The only hiccup there was just entering Hyrule Castle without expected. But Cithiel has officially entered the final dungeon in the game. Now, this does mean that he has to do harder variations of trial skip, because he does not have bombs to do a ledge clip, which is a slightly easier trick to do than a roll clip right here, which Cithiel is going for a frame-perfect trick. It's pretty tough to go for. Mado will have a slightly easier time as bombs, instead of giving it a 1-frame window, it gives Mado a 3-frame window. Mado's going for door clip right here. And it looks like Cithiel was able to jump out of bounds. Now, because of where he jumped out, he does need to do a little bit of leaf bumping. And it looks like he had plenty of magic to make it past the trials. So Cithiel has officially completed trial skip. He is on to the Phantom Ganon maze. This maze is very easy. It doesn't have a whole lot to really keep in mind. And this is because the maze is in the exact same format every single time. It is first go down, then left, then up, then left, then right, then up. Every single time, without exception. So Cithiel is mainly going to be stalled here based on item sliding, as Phantom Ganon spawning in the maze does have some interesting properties. If Cithiel cannot make it to the door in the item slide before Phantom Ganon spawns, Link loses his head for a second and then starts shooting backwards. It's very strange, but hopefully Cithiel can get through this section without that happening. And it looks like Cithiel had a very, very good maze. So now he just has to deal with Puppet Ganon here to spawn the light arrows. Best RNG there. Ganon spawning on the floor, Ganon spawning on the floor behind him is the best RNG. Fastest way to damage him and spawn the light arrows. The second fastest is when Ganon summons the blue ball for the dead man's volley. And then the slowest RNG is when he creates the big ball that must be countered by a spin attack. You got this, Mado. The main thing that is going to be a little bit of a defining factor of this race, or something that could very much make this an even race even at this point here, is the hover. At the very end of this game, after this next boss that Cithiel is getting ready to fight, there is an extremely tall room that at the very top contains the loading zone to get into the final boss for Ganon. Normally, if you had played this game without any speed tech and played it the way that Nintendo intended, you would have the hook shot, which just allows you to grapple or to hook shot onto that platform, walk through the loading zone, easy, you're at the final boss. We don't have the hook shot though, so we have to take an extremely difficult way to get there. This is done by doing something called a zombie hover. There's a lot that goes into explaining a hover and what exactly happens, but a zombie hover is a very difficult trick that is extremely mashing intensive, and the setup that Cithiel is using to start the zombie hover is more difficult than the setup that Mado will be using for the zombie hover. Cithiel has to damage himself on a Morph and has to deal with two elements of RNG that can be fairly major. A Morph being a little black dude with spikes on it that attach on you. Whereas Mado only has to deal with one Morph and can just simply bomb themselves to start the hover. I'll talk about it a little bit more detail and what exactly goes into that trick once we get there, but Cithiel first needs to navigate Puppet Ganon. Puppet Ganon is a boss with 3 phases. It also is very difficult to do fast, especially the first phase. There's only one weak point on Puppet Ganon. Oh, Mado having a bit of trouble with this tower here. Looking like staying on the path is getting to be a little bit difficult with the item slide, but it looks like they got it. They're going up the tower, so we're good there. But Puppet Ganon with Cithiel is getting ready to fight. The first phase is a more humanoid phase, actually about to show up here, and it only has one weak point, which is a blue ball on the very end of its tail. It moves around very erratically. It's kind of hard to time when to shoot that shot. So first phase is going to be very difficult. Second and third phase are also difficult for their own specific reasons. But we get to watch Cithiel start the Puppet Ganon fight here in just a couple moments. Can't imagine how hard it is not to reset when you hit a run killer. It's tough, but the race could still go on. Mado does have a chance to still win this. Cithiel getting the first shot right out of the gate, completely flawless there, but now is just looking for some good timing to get the orb. Waiting for Puppet Ganon to go into the little pose he goes into before attacking is a bit of a safer strat. The ball is in a bit more of a reliable position. It's just much more time consuming because you have to wait for him to get into that specific state. Looks like first phase got navigated. Next up, we have the spider phase, or the second phase. There is a fast skip that you can do on this particular phase of Puppet Ganon, which is something called Crip Shot. Whenever you hit the spider, and you hit the weak point on the spider, it stays up in the air and spins for a little bit, And if you have really good timing, you can actually get 2 shots in on one cycle as opposed to 1 shot in. So, looks like Cithiel is setting up fast spider drop for Puppet Ganon, moving back towards the ball here, and they will be going for Crypt Shot. It looks like they got Crypt Shot, so that's really, really good. That's a very difficult trick to pull off. Cithiel's main concern right now is magic. They have enough to be able to finish off Puppet Ganon, but they also need to start setting up for the zombie hover, so you will notice them take damage. This damage is intentional. They want to try and be on as low of health as possible at the end of the 3rd phase here. Cithiel is having to deal with a more difficult 3rd phase Puppet Ganon because of the fact that he does not have bombs. It means that they cannot stun Puppet Ganon for as long as Mado would be able to, and has to deal with spin attacks to try and stun as much as he can. It looks like Cithiel's actually going for Trog Shot. Looks like Cithiel got Trog Shot. That's a very difficult trick to do. If you stand behind the Puppet Ganon snake form and you do a light arrow shot, aim up and shoot another light arrow, you do have the chance of hitting that ball twice, and if you're really cracked, you can hit it a 2nd time while in the air, effectively killing Puppet Ganon in 1 phase, or 1 cycle, which is really, really good. But Trog Shot already is fantastic, made the ending of that Puppet Ganon fight very, very fast. Cithiel has a very strong lead coming into the final trick in the game, being the zombie hover, but let's see how it goes out here. There is a old saying in the Wind Waker HD racing community that it all comes down to the hover, and we're about to see exactly why that is. Climbing up this rope is a little bit weird. If you hold R and mash A and B, and you alternate it, you could just climb this rope really, really fast. There is a height limit, though, and a speed limit, so you do have to be a little bit mindful of how high you go up before you stop mashing. Cithiel looks like he was able to pretty much go all the way to the top there. They're also going for a chain climb strat. Looks like this is the new chain climb. 3 backflips, sword pull. Looks like they just missed it, but they didn't get crushed, which is good. They have another chance to go up the rope and try the chain climb again. Mado right now is getting ready to approach barrier skip. So they will first need to clip through Hyrule Castle, get past the knockback barrier, and go through the invisible planes that make up the harder part of the barrier. So let's see how these 2 tricks go on. Looks like Cithiel got crushed, so not quite good on the timing on the chain climb there. He has to climb up the rope a 3rd time. Mado looks like is going for the knockback cancel. Wasn't quite in the barrier that 1st time. That knockback cancel that Mado just got is a frame perfect input, so that is a bit harder to get than it seems. Mado's lining up the angle. They're on that little Hylian crest in the very top left. There are 2 pixels to line up, and if Mado has the correct angle, he should have the right amount of speed. They should just pop right through the barrier and head to Ganon's tower. Looks like they didn't quite have the right angle though, so they're giving it another try. Cithiel is taking a bit of time on chain climb, so it does give Mado a little bit of time to catch up here. That's the 2nd try on barrier skip for Mado. Cithiel still has not been able to attempt the hover once yet, so Cithiel is still ahead, but this is giving Mado a bit of time to catch up here. Cithiel's still missing the chain climb here. Looks like they still want to try and keep with that strategy. They are at half a heart, which is what is needed in terms of health for being able to perform the Flame Hover. And Mado just popped through the barrier, so Mado is now getting ready to enter Ganon's tower. They need to pick up the bombs, so that way they will be able to have bombs for the route. Oh, but it looks like they didn't have quite enough speed with that hop and voided out. So they need to re-perform the barrier skip, giving Cithiel a bit more time to get up to the hover. Yeah, Cithiel is damaging down. This is a good time to explain the zombie hover and exactly what that trick is and why it's important for this run. So, a zombie hover is a thing you can do in both Wind Waker SD and Wind Waker HD, where if Link dies, there is a small window before it gives you the game over animation and screen that you can perform an input. So if you perform a jump slash, it makes Link jump up in the air a little bit. But the game sees that Link is dead. Mado get past barrier skip. Let's see how the Ganon's Tower entry goes through. Ooh, a little bit of a risky speed there, but it looks like they were able to catch themselves and they have entered Ganon's Tower. Mado is able to now go for the bombs. But back on the topic of the zombie hover, if you jump slash while you have no health in the game will allow you to jump slash because you perform the input before it could perform the check to see if you had a fairy in the bottle. However, since you didn't have a fairy in the bottle, the game registers you as dead and cancels your jump slash. However, the game cannot call you as dead until you have both feet planted on the ground. So as long as you are airborne, you can continue to mash B to keep jump slashing to either gain height, maintain height, or slowly lose height. And once you hit the ground, that's when the game will check to see if you are actually truly dead. Now, why that's important for this trick is that these morphs here have the possibility of dropping hearts. If you stab a morph, this little black spiky dude on Cithiel, if you stab it on the same time that it attaches onto you, it guarantees that it will drop a heart, no matter what it's killed by. So Cithiel is wanting to get one morph that has that property up onto the ledge where Ganon's loading zone is, so that way, during the trick, he can shoot that morph with a bow and arrow, and it guarantees that it drops a heart. During the hover then, he needs to aim for that heart and land on it in order to be able to survive the trick and enter Ganon's loading zone. Both runners will have to do this. Cithiel's requires a more RNG-based setup and more difficult mashing, including a frame-perfect bow shot. Mado just has to deal with one morph and its RNG, as well as having a bit of an easier time going with the bow shot, as they can shoot the bow before they even start the hover, as well as having the benefit of not needing to hover for as long. Alright, looks like Morph 1 is in position. It looks like Cithiel now needs to use this pot here to slowly push this Morph away. Cithiel does have enough health to be able to die with a flame arrow shot to this Morph. So they do have enough to start the hover. It is now execution based, as Mado is just now getting the light arrows. Mado is definitely picking up the pace and is getting closer to Cithiel, but let's see how Cithiel handles the flame hover here. If you shoot the morph with a fire arrow and walk into it, it damages you, which is how this trick is able to even be performed. Got the fire arrow. Shot walked into the morph and fell off, so they are now performing the zombie hover. He is mashing B, the game is canceling the input, and he just keeps going to go even higher and higher. They're about in position to attempt the bone shot. They have one frame to do it. Looks like they nailed it. The morph has dropped a heart, so now Cithiel just needs to land on that heart. And if they land on it, they are now able to enter the final boss. Cithiel with a first try spicy hover. Extremely good. That is extremely, extremely good. Cithiel has a very strong lead. As long as they are able to beat Ganondorf without dying, this should be a victory. But Ganondorf isn't going down without a fight. There's a lot of things that can really kill the run right at the very end of this boss fight here. So we'll see how this boss plays out. There is a safety strategy that Cithiel can use by getting hearts from Princess Zelda right at the very beginning, but let's see if Zelda hearts are going to be an option during the race here. Mado right now just stocking up for the Puppet Ganon fight. You'll also notice that Mado did switch the gamepad for Puppet Ganon. The main reason why that is because gamepad has the benefit of having gyro or motion controls, whereas the Pro Controller does not. So, since aiming in this game is made much easier by those gyro motion controls, Puppet Ganon is most often recommended to be fought using a gamepad, as opposed to the Pro Controller. This cutscene here that Cithiel is watching is a little bit goofy as well. There's some perspective shenanigans that get pulled in this cutscene, in particular with the King of Hyrule. The rules of the Triforce are that whoever touches it and states their wish aloud gets their wish granted. You can see here that Ganon is clearly not touching the Triforce, so he hasn't followed Rule 1. The King of Hyrule in this scene is led to believe that he is touching the Triforce, though his wish will get granted. But if you go into free cam in this cutscene and actually like see if the King of Hyrule is touching the Triforce, he's like 4 feet away from it. So it's a little bit interesting, because King of Hyrule is also breaking Rule 1. This wish should not have been granted. Nobody's wish got granted in Wind Waker today. Nobody knew how to touch the Triforce. Mado getting ready to start the Puppet Ganon fight as Ganon is about to lose his mind laughing. Mado with the first shot, very good. Missed the second shot though. Third shot was a hit. They only need one more to get past this phase. Just a shy miss. Looks like they're going for the safe strat. First phase was taken care of just fine. However, Mado does not have any magic going into the spider phase, so they will need to take one extra phase to get stocked up on magic in order to be able to damage the boss. Alright, Ganon fight starting just as second phase. Puppet Ganon is getting ready to go fully underway here. So let's see how the fight with Cithiel and Ganondorf goes. Cithiel is not going for Zelda hearts, so if Cithiel gets hit once at any point during this battle, whether it be from Ganondorf or Zelda, they are going to need to repeat the hover. Looks like he was able to get first cycle, first phase Ganondorf though, so now they're on to second phase. This is a little bit more tricky as Ganon does have one attack in particular that can hit you from across the map, it seems. But Cithiel was able to do a first cycle, second phase, so now all Cithiel needs to do is bounce a light arrow and parry Ganon, and they have the victory. There's the light arrow bounce, the parry, and Cithiel has completed it. 122.54 according to Cithiel splits. Very, very good time. Congratulations to Cithiel, the winner of semifinals in the DoomZoom tournament for this round. We still have another semifinals round going on, I believe on Sunday. That will decide who gets to race in grand finals, but it looks like Cithiel for sure has one of those spots secured for grand finals. Mado right now currently going in to Puppet Ganon. Looks like there's one shot left on Puppet Ganon here. This is where the bombs come into handy, as the bombs can be used to stun. Ooh. Looks like a death on Puppet Ganon. Unfortunately, that does mean that the fight does need to be completely redone. Puppet Ganon does not save those phases, so they will need to fight phases 1 and 2 again. So one thing that has probably been noticed a lot about item sliding in general is that you'll notice that people kind of fling all over the place. They take out bombs for some reason. The camera goes from first person to third person in random intervals. That is all for specific reasons. Item sliding charges up a ton of speed very, very quickly, and if you have too much speed, it is easy to crash the game. Like I said before, you can crash the game in under 10 seconds with an overcharged item slide. So, what you can do is you can lock your speed in the item slide, or at least prevent it from going any higher. There are a couple of methods to do so. The first method is to press the target button, which is ZL or left trigger. With the bow, the boomerang, and the grappling hook, it shoots Link to the left. So if you're against a wall, then you just keep going against the wall and you have the amount of speed that you charged up. If you have the hook shot, it shoots you off to the right. No idea why. But another way to lock your speed is to pull out the bombs or pull out the skull hammer. So if you notice people are in the middle of an item slide, they're charging it in first person, and then suddenly they pull a bomb out of nowhere, that's what they're doing. They're locking their speed to ensure that they are not going past this game's speed limit and crash and have to restart their entire Wii U. Looks like the third shot on second phase Puppet Ganon has just landed. Starting back on third phase Snake Ganon. This one is a bit trickier than it seems. Just kind of moving around in one track seems like it's not as difficult as it looks, but where it really comes down to the difficulty in this boss is the fact that it bounces off walls. And when it bounces into walls, its trajectory goes completely nuts. It's very difficult to track where Puppet Ganon will go. And also whenever they bonk into the walls, it does spawn those little morph dudes. That is important due to something in this game called Morph Glitch. If you enter a cutscene or a die or save quit, basically if you enter any sort of loading zone with a morph attached to you, you have a chance to get Morph Glitch. It's not guaranteed, it's a chance that increases with every morph you have on you. But if you get Morph Glitch, that means that you cannot roll to get those morphs off you like you normally would be able to. You have to bonk onto a wall or bonk onto an item in order to dislodge the morph so it travels away and you're able to actually do what you need to do with it, whether it be start a hover or just get it off of you so you can go to where you need to go next. But it doesn't look like Mado had any morphs on them when they finished, so they should not have Morph Glitch. Cithiel did not have Morph Glitch at all either. But Mado is now getting ready to start the setup for the hover that requires the bombs. Looks like they are opting to do Pro Controller for this. Now the bomb setup is a little bit different than the spicy hover setup that we saw Cithiel do. With the bomb, you only did one morph. So with every single time that they go up to this top area here, they have a chance to, or they basically have 3 chances to get a morph that is good for this trick. Really good backup there on the rope by pulling Leaf there. That's kind of what I meant a little bit earlier about that rope having a bit of a speed limit and a height limit. If you don't climb that just right, it tends to kind of fight back. Beto with a good chain climb there, so they were able to get up onto this top area right now. The safest thing for the runners to do would be to unlock this warp pot. The matching warp pot is down at the very bottom of the room, so that way if they fail in getting these morphs set up, they can just go down to the bottom, jump back through the warp pot, and all 3 morphs will be respawned and ready for another try. So Cithiel's going for the sword and the morph grab. Looks like it worked perfectly here. Now for a roll to get it off, and they're using the leaf to blow the morph around. Their goal is, again, to get it up onto that platform where the loading zone into the Ganondorf fight is going to be. So right now, it looks like the morph is behaving as much as it can. The height that the morph gains, the direction that it goes, a lot of this part has some very small RNG that goes with it. However, this is much less RNG than what used to be done, which is time the zombie Hummer into a fairy. Ooh, looks like the morph is on the outside edge. Mado's going to need to do a little bit of setup here to try and save that. Now it looks like they're just going for the other morph. They were able to get the slash, so that's good. The other morph has since, just dropped off of the loading zone there. That morph is no longer able to be used. Really good morph RNG in the direction that it went after the roll. The direction that the morphs detach from Link and move after you roll is also RNG, so it can be a little bit difficult to start this process of blowing the leaf onto the platform just based on that very first roll and whatever crazy direction the morph picks that day. Looks like they didn't quite get it on the rail, which is very good. They wanted to be on the center of the platform, or at least in between the 2 rails. They got it on the platform, so right now they're trying to get it to the very edge of the platform itself. It looks like that they're getting pretty close here. This is also a little bit RNG based on direction and how far they move here. But he is on the edge, so that is good. The main thing is that they wants to be able to hit the morph with the bow while they are in that section right there of the wall. So they're going to... Ooh. That might work still. That was a good backup. But they wanted to shoot the morph, drop a bomb, and hit it to start the hover. The first bomb drop didn't look like it was in a good place, but that second bomb drop and slash was a very good backup. Mado was able to complete the hover. Very, very good job on Mado. That was a very good backup for that trick. That almost got very, very scary there. So Mado has officially entered the final boss. Just one long cutscene, one last boss fight, and Mado will have finished their race. That was an extremely good backup as well. That was, I have never seen that before. I definitely haven't seen that before. So that was major props to Mado. That was an excellent backup to the hover. Oh, looks like we have Cithiel in here with us, though I don't know when the post-run interview is starting, so...
I'm here, okay. I've been waiting here for a while, but it's fine.
Oh, you're all good, you're all good?
Yeah. I thought we were tight on schedule or something, but it's fine. We're good. That was quite...
don't know what the schedule after this is. I only know about the races for this tournament, so...
That's fair.
Yeah, we'll know to leave if Trez comes in here and yells at us.
Oh, that was quite the run. It was super... Like, I was aware that I had to race at this time, but it was such an impromptu race for me because I thought I was gonna make it just fine. However, something came up like out of nowhere, so I was like, okay, I think I should be like, I should be arriving at like 6, so that should be fine. I could warm up a little bit, 30 minutes or something. Not even that. I literally arrived at like, I don't know, 6:20 or something. So I was like
Oh
literally
wow.
rushing the setup. Yeah, so I was super incredibly nervous going into this race because I was like, I didn't practice, I didn't warm up, I didn't do anything. And like you could see that in my early game, which was like very shaky, like how I failed so many times the the freaking window jumps and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah, but everything else went surprisingly okay. So I got pretty much everything except the grapple skip. I don't know what
Yeah.
happened there.
Grapple skip is a little weird. Those 3 backflips into the sword pull are very precise, and if you hold any of those inputs early, it does mess up that entire setup. So that is a very difficult trick to climb up the chain like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's very position dependent. So it's also like really hard to do any sort of backup because it's like you don't know it's not gonna work until you do it. There's not like a
Exactly.
decent key. Yeah, so like I didn't have magic, so I couldn't even like immediately react when I like dropped all the way down and like fly towards the platform again and try it again. I had to climb the rope like what was it, 7 times, maybe 5, but it was
It was
something. Yeah.
it was a bit, but you still were able to pull ahead. So that is very
Yeah.
good.
I was surprised I got better skip that way because I was considering redoing the castle clip because I got Tetra and Tetra normally makes that super annoying. But
Yes.
I realized that if I probably try castle clip, I probably would take like even longer because that trick is still a mystery to me. Like it's like RNG, it's like hand RNG for me. Like I don't know what's going on with that trick. So I was like, I'm gonna try to get better skip with Tetra. It shouldn't be too bad. But fortunately, it all went pretty alright after that.
Ooh, very close on Mado there. Almost got
Ooh.
hit, but they were able to just get that knockback barrier.
Wow.
One thing about this fight that I did not mention when Cithiel was fighting Ganondorf is that around the top of the tower there is a barrier, much like the one by Barrier Skip. It is a knockback barrier, so if you hit it, it does give you iframes, but does not damage you.
Yeah, actually, a fun fact about that barrier, like it's the exact same barrier technically. Like it's even the same actor and all. It's just like tiny.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, you could technically do barrier skipping this barrier. It's pretty funny.
I wonder where it put you.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't think anyone has done it because barrier skip is already precise as it is. So doing it with this one should be a
Yes.
pain. But yeah, GG.
GG's Tomato finishing with I believe that was a 136.32. Could be wrong on the seconds there, but still a very good time. Hour 36 to beat Wind Waker HD is definitely something to be proud of. This game is
Yeah.
very long. All of these tricks are very difficult. A lot of frame perfect stuff, especially with the route that you were taking, Cithiel. But this is a very difficult game to learn. However, it is very fun. It is very rewarding. And if you did enjoy what you saw in the race here, the route that we saw with Mado and the late bombs route, as well as the 90% no manual super swim category, that is a very beginner friendly category to get
Yeah.
into speedrunning this game.
Yeah, for sure. And it may seem like a really intimidating speedrun at first, and it is honestly like so, yeah, like you said, like a lot of tricks are super run killer, or they
Mhm.
can be really tough to pull off in like a race. But honestly, it's a really fun and satisfying speedrun once it clicks, and like you don't gotta do what I the route I do, I guess, which is quite a bit, not just a bit harder, but getting bumps pretty consistent, and I think that this game is pretty beginner friendly for the most part. You can also like do post grapple or some category like that skips the whole beginning and you get straight to the fun, to the items lighting. So it's it's pretty cool. I hope people get excited about this tournament and decide to pick up this game because it's honestly really really fun.
Yeah, this,
hmm?
the community for Wind Waker HD is also extremely helpful and extremely
Yeah.
open too. So I know that Mr. Alberto, the world record holder for pretty much every category in this game now,
Yeah.
the only thing he's missing is glitchless, which is wild to me. But I remember when I first learned any percent no mail super swim, and during the process of learning this game and any percent and hundo, Alberto was always in the chat helping out. There's a whole bunch of other extremely helpful runners that that really want to make sure that this game is has the resources required to learn it, because it is quite the doozy.
Definitely. By the way, are we getting Mado here? Like, are we gonna get the Mado voice reveal, like world premiere or something like that?
Mado mentioned in chat that they did not have a mic.
Oh, unlucky. Dang.
So.
It'll still be a mystery for now. It's fine, Mado. Congrats. It was a really nice race.
Yes, very good
fun.
Performance from both runners. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say the same thing. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I can't wait for tomorrow though. Tomorrow is gonna be like the other round 2 match, and then right after that it's gonna be the semifinals. So
yes.
we can figure it out who's gonna be the other the other finalist.
Yep, that's exactly correct. So there are, in the DoomZoom tournament, there are 3 races left. There is the round 2 race happening tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time between Greylick Bread 1 and Nacho Runs. The winner of that is going to move on to the semifinals round that will be happening that same day between Sabzander and the winner of that round 2 race. And then grand finals will be occurring, I believe, on Sunday. I'm not sure if the time has been completely finalized yet.
No, we're working on that.
Yep. But on Sunday, or maybe not even Sunday, the grand finals race will be between Cithiel and the winner of the semifinal race that will be occurring tomorrow.
Alrighty then. Thank you so much, Video, for your commentary. GG to Cithiel for the win. Also GG to Tomato. Sadly didn't work out, but it can't happen all the time. So yeah, GG for now. My voice is dead. I'm not entirely sure what happened. My voice just died in an instant. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. We're gonna right over to ZSR 2, where we have the Ocarina of Time Randomizer Freaky Friday race. Thank you all for watching. Take it easy, and see you soon.
Bye.